Hey everybody, super excited to be here. This is Brad Nein, Vice President of Tormenta FC Academy, and I'm bringing together two of my favorite people. I have Matt Nein, who is the coordinator of sport performance at Salisbury University, and I got our very own Tormenta FC, DeJohn, who is our director of performance at the Youth Academy. These guys are going to be talking about optimizing performance today on the field, how we can continue to get better and what that actually looks like from a training standpoint. Matt, of course, is my brother here, does a fantastic job at Salisbury University, has been there for 18 years. He's the 2018 NSCA Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year, and he's worked with over 14 national championships, as you can see from his background, and over 340 All-Americans. Live-in legend in the city of Salisbury, and makes it happen with all of the athletic teams. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'm excited to talk about this today and really help out the youth and grow.
Sweet. And from our side, we have Drew. Drew's done a really great job with the MLS Next Program and being their strength and conditioning coach for once a week throughout the season. Also, when the teams do not have training, for example, nights it rains, he puts together workouts for them and does an awesome job with that. He's worked as a sports scientist within professional and collegiate soccer, and he's worked with our League One and League Two teams, and will be working with our W team. So Drew, thanks for being on here with us, buddy.
Yeah, of course. I'm looking forward to it, and finally got a chance to sit down with Matt as well. And my trophy case is these 5 books that I've read. So hopefully I can get some of those trophies in there sometime soon, but really looking forward to it.
Fantastic. And Drew, you see it from the youth soccer side as well, working with the 07 and the 09 NPL groups. So you really, you have it with the 13-year-olds, the U15s, and then the MLS Next group, League One, League Two, and the W League. So your plate is full and you're seeing it on all kinds of different avenues. Our title is Optimizing Performance today from the strength and conditioning side. And I wanted to bring both of you guys together because we have one person that works in the youth realm and one person that works in the collegiate realm. And we have so many players within our academy right now that are hoping and looking to advance to college at some point and play. So your two perspectives are going to be fantastic for this conversation and the growth of our players and their parents and learning what has to happen in both realms. So I'd like for you guys to tackle. Drew, if you want to go first, that'd be fantastic. But what does performance optimization look like in your world?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that I tend to see, and the easiest way, is to kind of put it into perspective, kind of have a relative understanding of what performance is, especially for the youth academy. And it's realistically, being a soccer coach that I am, and then having the performance aspect of what I do at the academy, the perspective is we want our athletes performing on the soccer field. You could be a really good athlete off the soccer field, but if you can't translate it onto the field, then you're not really optimizing your performance in the avenue that you really want to. So I really look for the athletes who are the major minute players on our academy teams, the ones who are really producing the goals and the assists and the defensive responsibilities, I guess, for lack of a better words, because in the youth game, not a lot of people like to be defenders. They all like scoring goals. So I really like to look towards the individuals in our academy who have that willingness and the open-mindedness to, I guess, educate themselves, or let our coaches and let people like myself and the athletic trainers that work closely with our academy teams and our professional teams, the ones who have the willingness to let us educate them are the ones who are optimizing their performance. Because with our kids who are at such a young age and may not really understand how to really dive in and be able to optimize their performance on their own, the ones who can really go at it and let us kind of fill them with those exercises that are going to help them perform better on the soccer field, the information that's going to help them recover better or prepare for a game better, more optimally warm up for a game, is kind of the first step, at least in this past fall season, really diving into this performance optimization at the academy is finding the avenue to get the athletes willing to let us really educate them.
And what we're really talking about is when you go on the field, you can give 100%. Is that the, that general definition kind of?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Performance optimization is, in my eyes, is once you step onto the field, you feel confident enough in everything that you've done leading up to the game, everything you've done in the 22 hours beforehand, the 7 days beforehand, to prepare myself to perform optimally on the field.
Sweet. Thank you, Drew. Great perspective. Matt, you might have a little different view coming from a college, or how the kids perform and how they prepare. So would love to hear your point of view.
Yeah, I think it's actually very, very similar. Like there's probably more similarities in it than there are differences. One of the things that we actually define optimal performance for our coaching staff and so forth. And we look at it as an equation. I think it's the easiest way to see it. We talk about abilities, right? And that's really what, from a strength and conditioning side, that we have really control over, right? So looking at your speed, your power, your endurance, right? Your movement abilities, or mobility is another way we may hear that. So those critical pieces over there, those are considered your abilities, right? And then we also have the skills, right? So how do you take strength, speed, power, endurance, and incorporate that into your actual skills, right? So your ability to dribble, pass, right? Move in space, things along that line. Because you can have people who can't really read the game very well, and they always seem a step behind, right? And they're explosive, they're quick, they're so forth, but they can't translate, right, those abilities into the skills related to play the game, right? And then we have a third addition to that, right? So it's abilities plus skills plus your mental makeup, right? And so that mental ability to be confident, kind of like Drew said, to be able to perform, right? That you've done what you need to do, right, to build confidence, to be able to step on that field against high competition and then play. And it takes each one of those three components to really be developed to create optimal performance. And so we want to make sure, I think sometimes that mental piece gets left out a little bit. And I think that's a huge piece that really can be enhanced and developed to create optimal performance. Again, you can have athletes who are highly skilled and have high strength, high speed, high power, but then their mental game, right? They break down at a bad call, right? Or they're too ingrained into that bad call, or somebody didn't make the right pass when they made a hard run. And that can really negatively impact performance. So I think it's a critical piece to add in there on that one.
Can you just give us an overview, Matt, the three things without the explanation?
Yeah, so it's abilities plus skills, right, plus mental performance, right, equals optimal performance.
Awesome. So let me build one more question out for you there, and then we'll go to Drew after that. Mm-hmm. So you're around the players on a daily basis, for the most part, in most of the teams you work with. What kind of routines can you build out for your players so that they're having this type of success at the college level that you've defined?
Well, I think that's the first thing, is it's got to be defined, right? So we got to take that step back and say, okay, well, what is it that we want to see? So we'll look at KPIs. So what are our key performance indicators? What are specific things, like what does speed look like for the game of soccer? What does power look like? And then based off of their assessment, where they sit, we've got to measure that and make sure we're in the right realm of where we want to go. And so then, so again, that's an awareness piece. Everybody's aware of where we are, where we need to go. And then it's a matter of defining standards that will help us create these daily habits to get there. So what is a training standard in the weight room, or what is our running standard, right? I'll design the program, and you can show up to the program and go through it, but what does that really look like? Can you put high effort, or do you see athletes with low effort in that running session, right? And again, that's my job as a coach to one, define what I want to see, and then really push to uphold that high effort, that work, that dedication, because it's really easy for people to just, I guess, go through the motions, right? And we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. And again, that's where some of that mental piece comes into play. So really it's defining it. I think defining it, making them aware of where they are, and then where do they want to go? Where are we trying to get them as coaches? And then what are the daily standards or habits that we can do that'll help reach us there? We use 5 pillars. Again, so we just break it down because it's the easiest way for everybody to understand. Looking at your weight room standard, your running standard, a recovery standard. So that's nutrition, sleep, and then playing the game, right, as another one. Right. So just breaking these pillars down to be able to see, each of these components, to get them down and create that. What do things look like in the weight room? How hard should we work? How many days a week should we be there? What is the intensity and effort? And what does it look like as a team to be a better teammate? Things along that line. They got to be defined.
Can you give us one? And that's all great information. I love it, and it's super helpful to see as our players are developing, and what the expectation is with the strength and conditioning specialist that they get to. Do you have maybe a mental example that our players could walk away with that maybe you do with your athletes?
So what do you mean? Like what would it look like lifting, or what do you mean?
Just something like a routine. So, something that you work with the athletes in creating something where they can be at their best mentally on game day.
Yeah. So, some of it's just, sometimes it will introduce a concept. So looking at, we do an example called the Tower of Hanoi, and it's a fun little game. I'd recommend go looking at it and trying it. And it's an activity that can be done in a very, very short amount of time, but it could also take a very long amount of time. So basically it's stacks. They incrementally get smaller. We use plates for that. So a 45, 25, 10, 5, 2.5. And it starts on one end, and you got to get it to the third pillar, right? So there's 3 boxes, and you got to get that whole stack to that third box, right? And so what we end up doing is the rules, you can move 1 plate at a time, and a big plate can't go on top of a little plate, right? So you got to get that whole stack on the third end. And what ends up happening is people just start going through the motions, right? They're just doing it, trying to win the game, right? And so this one, from a mental standpoint, we're talking about the process and staying in the process and focusing in the moment, what's most important, right? And not worrying about the bad call that just happened or whatever, right? We're trying to stay in the moment, focus on what's most important. And so this is the introductory exercise that we do. And if you focus on what's most important, which is the very next move, you'll finish it in a very short amount of time, about 25 to 40 seconds, you'll get this done. And when we introduce this, we don't tell the athletes how to go about doing this. And so a lot of the rookies they'll take 4 or 5 minutes to get through it, and they're just playing the game. They're not ingrained in the game, focusing in the moment, right? And so then how do we translate, right? Because this is the mental aspect that we want to see as they translate onto the field, right? So as they step up to the rack, right? So that's done usually in week 2 or week 3 of our training sessions, right? Then now into week 4, 5, and 6 is as you step up onto the rack, we want you to work on a mental routine that allows you to refocus and only focus in the moment. It could be a deep breath, right? And it's just lost, right? Or you could, slap your leg, whatever it is, right? You can create your own, right? And then that is that refocus, right? To get in the moment and focus right now. And so as they're stepping up onto the rack, that's what we do, right? That's that refocus routine, dive in and focus on the next rep of that movement. Now, one thing, we have power meters, so we can look at how fast bars are moving. And so it's a test then for them to be able to see, okay, you moved that one at a 1-1, and then your second rep went at a 1-3. We're like, how focused were we in that first rep? Or were we just going through the rep to get through it? And all of a sudden it's like, I don't know if I really was as focused. All right, next set, let's change it. Right? I want you to dial in, right? So it's a constant on my end as a coach to have to really be involved and in depth with what they're doing, or they'll just, they just sometimes miss it because there's so much going on, right? So it's a fun activity. Take a look at it. And it's a great way to really go through focusing in the moment and the most important move, which is the very next one, that's soccer, right? That's any sport.
Right. Absolutely. And, almost forgetting what happened previously and then moving forward. And how do you create that as an automatic response so you can go towards success?
And it's routine, right? It's your routine. It's what you do. So it's a skill that has to be developed. And again, how do you incorporate that every day? That's the job of the coach, or my job as a strength coach, to incorporate that into our training so it becomes the norm. So when we're out on the field, again, trying to optimize performance, that because we all have these thoughts, right? We're all going to have this thought where, man, that was a bad call, right? But do I let it continue, or do I stop it? I press pause, I reset my mind and attack what's next. That's the pattern we want. And how do we do that? We create a routine, clears my mind, and I'm off. Right?
Awesome.
Yeah, can I just to follow that up as well with a couple of things that I've been trying to incorporate in the academy is trying to build, and one of them is very acute, one of them is a little bit more broad, but the building routine specifically is the acute one that I've been trying to do a lot, and it's easy for the teams that I coach specifically is a routine, a warm-up routine before every game that everyone on our team knows and expects. And it's not because it's easy for a coach to say, hey, go do the same routine that we always do, and then I just go and talk to their coaches or kind of just hang out and wait for the game to start. But physically, they know what is coming. They can go through that routine and they know what is coming, and they don't have to think about it. And then me as a coach can go and I can talk to individual players, get them in a right frame of mind to work on tactical things, or I can talk to the team itself as they're going through this warm up, as they're going through first thing we do, second thing we do, third thing we do, and really talk about the game at the level that we're at. We kind of see the same teams 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. So we expect to see a certain style of play against us. So I can communicate that to my team and they can really start to think about the game. They're not worrying about the warm up. They're not worrying about the breakfast that they just ate, or the 7-hour car ride they were just in, or the things that their parents were saying in the car on the way here. They can focus on the game. They don't have to worry about warming up because physically they're going to be ready, especially me as their coach. I'm going to try and get them ready. And they can really focus on going out and performing on the field once the whistle blows. And then the second thing is really trying to generalize, and generalize may not be the best term for it, but standardize, I guess is a better way of saying it, of a proper warm-up across the entire academy. And a reason for that is, and it's really good for kids in our club having the opportunity to kind of guest play on different teams and move up and play in older age groups and experience different levels, is going into a team that has the same warm-up routine, has a very similar structure, first phase of training when it comes to the physical activation of a session. And they're not worrying about, okay, this coach is doing something completely different. I'm distracted with that. Now I'm not going to perform because I'm worried about what I am doing physically and not what I'm doing technically with my feet. Where if we can get all of our coaches on the same page of this is our physical activation, no matter if it's a 10-year-old up to an 18-year-old, obviously there's differences in the way they perform it, the speed of which they do it. But if the movements themselves are very similar, then the kids aren't worrying about that and they're more focused on performing with the ball at their feet.
It's fantastic. And could you quickly, because not everybody does this, so maybe you're educating some coaches out there right now, but as those kids are doing their standard warm-up, what are you, and you mentioned it a little bit, but I want you to go in detail on one of those topics. What are you doing to further prepare them where they do not have to worry about learning a new type of dynamic warm-up or passing pattern or whatever they're doing before the game? What are you doing to provide just a little bit more motivation or focus for them during that piece?
Absolutely, yeah, and it may be very psychologically based, but some examples and some examples from this past weekend that we just had some games is we played some teams that we had played before, and the first time we played them, we didn't end up with a good result. So the first thing I said to them was, let's cut this result in half. Say we lost 2-0, let's go out, and if we lose 1-0, it means, and in their eyes, in their development, then we're 50% better than we were compared to this team last time, and kind of jog their memory of, okay, last time we played this team, the feelings that we had last time that we played this team, some of their better players last time we played this team. Hey, number 10 was their best player. Start remembering things that he did in the game. So now you're thinking, okay, in the game, he's left-footed. He cuts left all the time. I know that. I'm expecting that. Okay, the team captains are running them through the warm-ups, and I'm kind of cueing that with them, but I'm really focused on getting their head right in preparation for what's next. And we kind of do that. They're not worrying about a ball at their feet yet. They're just doing the physical piece. So, okay, I can really put things into their head. Once we finish that physical activation, then we transition and we get some technical work in. That technical work in the development with my team specifically is very much geared towards what we've been working on in training. So this past weekend, we got through that physical activation. Now, okay, hey, we've worked on this tactic and this team structure. We're going to go and do it. You already know who we're playing. You already know what to expect from who we're playing. Now let's go and worry about ourselves. Let's worry about, okay, we need to be better at playing down the wing or finding a midfielder or the back line shape. And then now they know what they're expecting out of the other team. They're physically prepared, and now they're ready to go and try and do a better job of what we've been working on in training.
It's so important that lead up to the game, the 45-minute lead up or however long your warm up is, and the mental preparation is key. I just wanted you to go over as well a little bit, because you've been seeing our MLS Next groups on Mondays every Monday, which is something different. We've never done anything like this before here at the club, but in conversation with you, we found it to be so important to get some of this strength and mental training scheduled into these players every Monday. How has that been going?
It's been going really well, and I kind of thinking about this topic before jumping on this call is, and you just said it, those two caveats, the mental performance and then that physical performance, are kind of, in my eyes, and I may be incorrect in saying this in 2021, but are kind of the last two pieces of creating an optimal athlete. When you turn on the TV and you watch the top level European soccer teams, is you'll see some really good 16, 17, 18-year-olds in the team, but then you don't see them the next game. And then, you may see them for half of this game, but then, okay, well, they're supposed to be the best player in the world. Why aren't they on the field for 90 minutes, 3 times a week? And we're seeing them every week. Is one, they're experience wise and mental maturity wise, they may not be there ready to handle a monotonous routine, a disciplined routine, a every day has to be very dialed in routine as a 16, 17-year-old can be tough. And then secondly, the physical side is they're just physically not ready to be prepared to play 3 games a week at that level. So let's kind of give them little doses here and there. And then once they've reached that physical standard, they've hit all the benchmarks in the sports science department when it comes to speed, power, distance traveled, recovery statuses, then we can really trust their ability on the field week in and week out. And that's kind of the two things that I've kind of presented to our MLS Next teams is, and this is more or less kind of out of the training, is if we can really understand the importance of those two things, your technical ability on the ball, your tactical understanding of the game can be a lot easier for you to really become elite at. You're not worried about the physical side because you're spending the time doing it. It's almost like it's almost being really good at time management, but instead of time management, it's physical preparedness management. It's managing your ability to become a mental giant. It's managing your ability to slowly become a better athlete just in general, and eventually applying that to the sport that we play, and then because you're doing that, you can really go and focus on becoming a better soccer player specifically.
Matt, you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, it's like I said, I think we're speaking the very, very similar languages. I mean, with the concepts of mental preparation and the value, especially from a warm up standpoint. I think it's got tremendous value. It's the game is 90% mental, right? You'll hear that in various sports across the board, right? But being able to make sure our athletes are ready to step on the field of play and perform at this elite optimal level. I mean, the mental piece is critical. Again, that's, from our prep standpoint, it's the same, right? There's two responsibilities: make sure they're mentally ready and physically ready to step on that field of play.
Awesome. And, Drew, you played at a high level of, in college, and Matt, you played soccer at a fairly high level in baseball at the D1 level. That soccer is a super physical game, and this stuff is important with the strength and conditioning. You both have so much experience in the college realm. We have players that are, and we've had players that have left here, going on to different colleges, didn't quite know what to expect with their strength and conditioning experience. We didn't have a strength and conditioning experience, so anything they did on their own in the past. And it was just not controlled in a manner that people were preparing themselves for soccer. They might have been preparing themselves for chest and back day, or buys and tries, or whatever it comes down to in the newest book you read. But what can people, and I'd love for both of you to interact and talk about this one, since you have such good experiences with it. But as I'm on the U19 team and I'm getting recruited to play at Wofford or College of Charleston or Jacksonville or Salisbury or whatever, what am I expecting? How should I prepare myself to be ready for the strength and conditioning side? And then when I get there, what should I expect?
Yeah, I'll go first on this one. I mean, I think, talking with, Coach Jim Berkman, he's our men's lacrosse coach here, and he's won 12 national championships. And he talks about this concept of the edge. And his initial concept with it is, what are you going to do outside of the normal practice time? And he said, he's looking for, from a recruiting standpoint at athletes who are, who have that mindset or that ability, or they've done it, where they're not just practicing, 1, 2, or 3 times a week, right? They are, because what ends up happening is, you practice, let's say in the afternoon, 2 times a week, for 4 hours, maybe 5 hours out of that, a 7-day or 6-day a week concept. The 7th day would be maybe an off day or whatever. And then all of a sudden you come to the college setting, and lifting is 3 to 4 days a week, running 4 to 6 days a week. Getting skill work done is every day. And all of a sudden you went from training, a low number of hours per week to now a super high set of hours. And I think that's where that transition people struggle with the most, because it's so drastically different. And so it's a matter of trying to, understanding what is your expectations at that college level, which is, lifting 3 to 4 days a week, running 4 to 6 days a week, where you're involved with your strength and conditioning coach. And then also skills, your skills work. I mean, we'll run a non-traditional off season, coming up here in the spring for soccer, where they're going to practice for 16 practices. And then they'll have other team skill work that they're doing leading in and leading out of that. And they're also lifting and still running with us during all that same time. And that's where they get overwhelmed the most. I think that's just understanding what the expectation is really important.
Yeah, and I'll kind of preface everything I'm going to say kind of in my lens and my hope and my goal for the academy is to get them to the point where that doesn't happen. And this, I guess, is my opinion kind of wrapped all up into it, is I try and preface the way I explain what a 19-year-old should do to get ready for a college strength and conditioning experience. And this is my experience, and Matt, you may kind of disagree with it because you've been around it a lot longer than I have, but it's not so much, and I'll use squatting for an example. It's not how much you can squat going into your freshman year, but it's your ability in your squatting movement. Your strength and conditioning coach isn't going to care if you can squat 100 pounds or 500 pounds. As long as you can do it right, no matter where you're starting, you're better off than probably 50% of other athletes coming in their freshman year. And so my goal with the academy is I'm seeing our oldest age groups for the first time and trying to instill the best techniques and the best habits I can before they go off in 6 months for their freshman year. But if I can kind of instill those same things in our youngest kids, the 13s, the 14s, by the time that they're 16, 17, 18, they already know what they're doing. Now we can really hammer home volume, we can hammer home intensity, and then they're stepping into their freshman year and they have the technique, but then they also have that physical preparedness because we've worked on technique for the first 3 years. Now we can really hammer home ramping up the intensity, ramping up the volume, with it being running, with weights specifically, and then obviously all of the training load with all of their soccer specific sessions in a week. And then we've kind of hit their physical ability, but then we've also really tackled their physical skill as well, kind of two parts of the equation that you use, Matt. And that's I guess partially my opinion, partially kind of my game plan going forwards over the next few years with the academy, and all in all, kind of the outlook I can hopefully have with them.
Drew, I like that. I mean, that's that long-term model, right? And right now, you know, we don't really, I think it's better now than it's been in years past because of the high performance facilities and that exists. And, you know, having you specifically there, you know, within the academy and so forth, you know, it helps start to get everything closer together. And I think, like you said, that there was that big gap before. And I like, you know, people, you know, like you are really closing that gap to make athletes, you know, the young athletes have a better transition to be more successful when they arrive. And like you said, you know, we're not, you know, I would rather you move better, right, than have a ceiling on you, you know, in terms of your abilities being capped because you were trying to do things that you weren't developmentally ready for too soon, too early, because that's what looks cool or what you see in a magazine or on Instagram. You know, I'd rather, you know, move more efficiently. You know, it's developmental over time. You know, we're not moving, you know, like, or in terms of doing activities or exercises or training sessions like professional players, because we're not there yet. We're not strong enough. We're not powerful enough. We're not, you know, fit enough to be able to perform that at that movement. And it'd be the same as they work their way down. I'm sure, Drew, you guys aren't doing what we're doing. And if you are, you know, they're ready for it, right? I mean, that's, you've done your work to make sure that they're ready to rock and roll for that. So definitely, you know, I think it definitely smooths that across, and it's definitely going to help, you know, athletes transition and be more successful, which is ideally what we're, you know, here for.
Definitely. Yeah. I definitely try and kind of use my experiences in the college and the professional game and find those athletes that can kind of be comparable to where our athletes are now, and then backtrack their current standards. So a current 25-year-old professional with our USL1 team is, okay, they left college 3 years ago. Where were they at when they were a senior in college, back to a freshman, drop it down to a senior in high school, and then continue, okay, where would they have been with the level they're at now at 15? And okay, can we start implementing some of those same aspects, same schemes with them?
And I'm assuming if they can't, you backtrack again, right?
Right.
Yeah, it'd be the same. Yeah, we're the exact same. You know, it's you come in, you see where they're at, and whether you can continue to progress, or we have to pause and stay for a little bit, or we might have to take that step slightly back. And at the end of the day, it's what's optimal and when we do that, you take those steps, you change, they make the adjustments physically, right? They start getting stronger and more powerful in that movement and more efficient in their movement. And all of a sudden, then we start seeing this massive takeoff, and they're almost, they start really getting closer and closer to their peers, very, very fast and strength wise, because we almost remove some of that ceiling that was holding them back.
Definitely. Yeah, I think one of my selfish goals long term is to kind of have college strength coaches get one of our incoming freshmen and be like, dang, wow, that Tormenta club was doing something right. Yeah, absolutely. We gotta figure out why this person is the way they are coming into our weight room freshman year. And that's
100%. I would love to. We're starting to see that now. Like, where have you been training? And
yeah,
like, it's good.
I know you didn't see that like 10 years ago, Matt. So it's
no, and that's the thing. Like, when I first started in those first 10 years, it was because there wasn't a lot of performance facilities out there, and so a lot of the athletes had never even trained before. So I don't, sometimes that was a good thing,
and at
because
the
they were
level, right? I don't know. Did people see that at the D1 level too, or was it more of a D3?
In certain sports, it was where we trained more than we didn't, right? And so some did, some didn't, and so it was, it really changed as the sports, like a traditional football or things along that line, like they always would, right? But then, things that you would see in soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, things like that, it didn't exist nearly as much. And so now it's an everyday, all day, type of thing. So.
Yeah, I think my freshman year going in 2014, I think 0% of us had any traditional strength and conditioning experience in high school. And then kind of, 5 years on working in a very similar club to Tormenta in New York, every single kid in the academy, from their lowest level kids all the way up to their top level, then development academy, now MLS Next, are all doing strength and conditioning. And it's something that we're trying to emulate here. Is every single one of those kids may go Division 3, Division 2, Division 1, and then they're slowly planting seeds everywhere of just having a little bit of an education prior to college.
Awesome. Last question, and then we'll wrap this thing up. You guys have done an awesome job, and there's so much information out there for parents and kids to continue learning. But in the next 5 years, for better or worse, where do you see performance optimization going? Will I have my 7-year-old out here doing things to optimize his performance on the playground, or is it going to be stay in a realm where it's at now, or what will this thing look like in 5 to 10 years? I'd love to hear your points of view.
Yeah, I would, the biggest thing I think is technology. It's already happening at the elite levels. I see it as being in the next 5 years, this trickle down concept, and looking at, level of readiness. And I, it's again at various levels in terms of technology of how you're doing it. We don't have a lot of the fancy gadgets and GPS units and things like that, but we're still using various technology, parameters where they're taking vertical leaps, and we're assessing central nervous system readiness, like your ability to perform on any given day, right? You could have optimal performance. You can't really have that if you're not really recovered and ready. And so there's different types of technologies that are looking at that, and how are we feeling in every given day, whether we're a green light or a yellow light, back off a little bit, or a red light, and really optimizing that. You're seeing it, sleep data, that are we getting quality sleep that's aiding in recovery? That to me is where this thing's going, and we're starting to see it in the amount of data science jobs that are coming about in the field. And I think it'll start trickling down to that. It's moving through the Division 1 down to the Division 2. There's schools that I'm aware of that have it. The GPS units, the heart rate units. It's going to be down to the high schools and into the club levels, I think, sooner rather than later. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I can see a little bit of both in there.
Definitely. Yeah, I will agree with everything and be very simplistic and kind of what I say is I think the next 5 years, at least from our lens, sports optimization is going to be lying in the other 22 hours of the day and not so much the 2 hours that you're on the field. And a lot of that's because of the technology, but the way you sleep, the quality of your sleep, how you're recovering before, during, and after competition and in training is really where that next step in sport optimization is going to lie.
Drew, I would say along with that, I like that. I like that you see like the other 22 hours. I also think some of this technology is going to come into the way in which coaches are designing their practices. So more focused on some of the workload management pieces, how long, durations, intensities, and things along that, and start manipulating that piece, which again isn't necessarily their optimal them performing. It's the coach designing better programming so that they can perform at optimal 5 days from now, 4 days, 3 days, 2 days, 1 day, in that context. And I think technology is going to be one that carries along with that.
Yeah, I think we've kind of gotten to the point where the technology's been around long enough. We have enough data to show, okay, this is what's the most important thing to kind of look at going into a session to really optimize that workload. And a lot of stuff that I've been doing is the heart rate data, the training load data from GPSs. And we've been collecting it enough to really know that instead of looking at everything under the sun, let's really pinpoint these handful of metrics and use these to tailor training. 100% agree with that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we greatly appreciate it, guys. Is there there's going to be some people that have questions, and if they reach out to me, that's perfectly fine. You can get me at email bnein@tormentafc.com. Is there an easy way to get up with you guys for parents out there that are looking for whether it be technological advances or more technique ideas or mental training? How can they get up with you guys?
Yeah, email is probably the best for me as well. MANEIN at Salisbury, SALISBURY.edu. That's definitely going to be the best way to get a hold of me. So, but if you find me on Facebook or Instagram and direct message, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, same for me. Email, it's DEJOHN, so DeJohn at tormentafc.com. And then again, I'm not really on social media very much besides the Tormenta performance page, which is, I believe the page is TFC Performance. You can look that up. Besides that, that's the best way to find me.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time you took in advancing our youth players at Tormenta and throughout the country. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.
You as well.
Thanks for having. Appreciate it.